What up, Nate? So I'm doing this video. I think it's better for you to just listen instead of reading, and I'm a lazy typer. So anyway, I wanna comment and share my thought on what you said in regards to I believe the word you said, I think it was the destruction or some shit in regarding to the industry and what Sync has done. Okay, and I told you that I somewhat agree, and here's what the way I see it. Okay, you say, and a lot of people in this group page say that Sync is the one that turned this industry into the shit show that it is. Okay, and honestly, I don't think that's it. Okay, for me, the way I see it, the culprit behind all this downfall, saturation of whack ass wannabe retarded DJs coming out of the woodwork, it wasn't Sync. It wasn't controllers. It wasn't CDJs. It wasn't even Serato. The way I see it, I think the downfall to everything is the complete and total accessibility of music. That is the culprit. Basically, when music became digital in regards to the DJ world. Back in the day, in the 80s and 90s, they were, if you want to be a DJ, you got to buy turntables, you got to buy records. Okay, today, people, buy a laptop, buy a little controller, you're good to go, right? So people think that's the downfall. It's because of Sync, it's because of Pioneer, it's because of whatever is, they fucked up the DJ industry. And they're somewhat correct. To me, it's the complete accessibility of music. When music became digital and became shareable, that is what made DJs, or shall I say, that's what made people wanting to become DJs overnight. That's what gave the freedom for DJs to become overnight, the easy access to music. Because back then, a pair of turntables, depending on where you shop, you could get a pair of turntables for $1,000. Back in the 90s. There were a lot of people that could spend $1,000 on a pair of turntables in the 90s. You had rich parents, people that had a little money, they could have easily bought turntables, back in the day and become DJs. But that's not what stopped them. Anybody could spend $1,000 and buy some turntables. What stopped them? This. Okay, they did not want to spend hundreds and thousands of dollars to buy records. Okay, because you could spend $1,000, buy a pair of turntables. Okay, but in order to rock a party, if you're going to be playing at parties, you can't do it with 200 records. You know what I mean? You would have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on music to become a DJ. And that's what stopped them. Today, and when I mean today, we're talking 15, 18 years ago, digital music, people buy a laptop, $400 or $500, depending on the laptop. You buy Serato, the box, about $400 or $500. There's about $1,000 right there. Okay? But what made them continue? The accessibility of music. Okay? This right here. The hard drive. You could go on eBay or Craigslist, and there are people selling hard drives with 300,000 songs for a couple $100. Okay? This is what made people become DJs overnight. Serato, CDJs, controllers, those are just tools that a DJ uses to play digital music. Can you imagine? Can you imagine when music became digital, the price didn't change? You know what I mean? If to buy a single song on Beatport or whatever costs $12.99, you know what I mean? Okay, and it wasn't shareable. You know, you buy Pro Tools or Ableton or Logic or any of those things, you know, they have it that when you buy it, you just can't give it to somebody else. You know what I mean? So can you imagine if music was like that? That if you buy something on Beatport, you just cannot share it with somebody else. We wouldn't have the issue we have today. So to me, the accessibility to music, people, this right here, this is your Skynet, all right? You know, if people didn't want to spend $200 on eBay or wherever to buy a hard drive with 300,000 songs, dude, they could go to their buddy's house. They go to their friends and say, hey, share, you know, let me borrow your hard drive for a day. Let me download everything. Boom. That's been happening. You know what I mean? So, because let me tell you, when sync came along, the industry was already saturated with Playboy Playmates becoming DJs, celebrities becoming DJs. All that was happening before sync. If I'm not mistaken, sync really took off with the 2000, I think it was a Nexus, okay? And I keep forgetting what year that was. I want to say maybe 2015, 16, right around there, maybe. I'm not too sure, okay? But when sync hit the industry, we already had celebrities being DJs and bikini models being DJs and Playboy Playmates being DJs. Paris Hilton became a DJ prior to sync. Just before sync hit, she was a DJ. She was using pre-recorded sets, obviously, you know. She doesn't do that anymore, you know. But the point is, before sync hit, all that nonsense was already happening. The industry was already getting saturated with all these people being DJs overnight. Why? Because music was accessible like water. You know, somebody could buy 300,000 songs in a day. That, to me, that's the reason why the industry is the way it is today. This right here, man, like I said, this is your Skynet right here. So yeah, that's the way I see it. Sync, Serato, controllers, that's just a tool to play digital music. Okay? It's the accessibility of digital music. That, to me, is what is the root of everything. Because all this bullshit was already happening before sync even hit. Okay? So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. Let me know how you see it. It's a big part, don't get me wrong, because even when Serato and the accessibility of music came along and people were becoming literally DJs overnight, they still had to learn how to mix. You know what I mean? They still had to learn how to mix. With the exception, you know, of people like Paris Hilton and some other people, pre-recorded set. You know what I mean? But when sync came along, it just made certain DJs lazy, you know. And the new DJs, they were like, hey, well, I don't have to learn how to mix. I got sync. You know what I mean? So even though those DJs prior to sync were coming out of the woodwork, your Playmates and your celebrities and your 16, 17-year-old kids that wanted to be cool and become DJs, all that was happening before sync. But yeah, they had to learn how to mix. That is definitely true. Sync just made it easier for the generation after those kids, which is not too far apart. They didn't have to learn how to mix. You know, they got the sync to do that for them. But anyway, so yeah, that's the way I see it. I think the culprit is not any type of gear or program, including sync. I don't think it's a small part, okay, small part, but the culprit is basically digital music. People don't have to buy music anymore. You know, they could go to people's houses and that's it. They just collected 40 years of music in one day. You know, so that's the way I see it. That's, to me, that's the culprit. The accessibility of digital music, people just giving it away, sharing it, and that's what gave everybody, the freedom to become literally DJs, or quote unquote, DJs overnight. Because back then, hundreds and hundreds of people could afford turntables. Okay, they could, but it's this. This is what stopped them, because I'm pretty sure we've been around long enough to remember when a single was like $4.99, and then some years later, domestics were like $6.99, $7.99, and $8.99. And then imports, when those were coming along, we were paying $8.99, and then finally in the early 2000s, we were paying $14.99 for an import. So this is what stopped people from becoming DJs overnight, the way it is today, back in the 90s. Okay, not gear. Same thing with today. It's not gear that made people be DJs overnight. It's the accessibility of music. Anyway, that's my thoughts. Let me know what you think. All right? Peace.